Could a man truly live for centuries, a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires, or was he something more? In the personal diary of King Louis XV, a monarch who ruled one of the most powerful nations on earth, there is a chilling private speculation. Had he just shared wine with a man who claimed to have known Pontius Pilate personally? This was the Count of Saint-Germain, a man who walked out of nowhere and into the heart of European power in the middle of the 18th century. He arrived in Paris not as a petitioner, but as an equal to kings. His wealth was fathomless, his jewels flawless, his knowledge of history, science, and art seemingly absolute. He spoke every European language without a trace of an accent, composed music that rivaled Handel, and painted with a brilliance that made court artists weep with envy. He possessed a past no one could verify and a present that defied all logic. At the glittering, treacherous court of Versailles, a place where a single misplaced word could mean social ruin or a midnight trip to the Bastille, he did not just survive, he thrived. The salons of Paris buzzed with whispers. Who was this man? Some said he was the wandering Jew, cursed to walk the earth until the Second Coming. Others claimed he was the illegitimate son of a king, perhaps the Queen of Spain. He himself, with an enigmatic smile, offered no answers. He simply performed miracles. He would take a diamond with a visible flaw, hold it in his hand for a moment, and return it to its owner utterly perfect. He claimed to have an elixir that halted the aging process, and indeed, for the 40 years he was a public figure in Europe, he never appeared to age a single day. He was a man in his 40s, perpetually. This uncanny ability to defy time and material laws made him a sensation. He became the cherished confidant of the king's powerful mistress, Madame de Pompadour, who was fascinated by his intellect and his apparent mastery over the secrets of nature. Louis XV himself, a monarch known for his cynicism and melancholy, found in the Count a companion who could speak of the court of Babylon as if he had been there yesterday. The kings of Europe played at war, while Saint-Germain played with kings, but no one ever understood what the stakes were in his game. His rise was meteoric, but in the viper's nest of Versailles, every ray of royal favor casts a long, dark shadow of envy. The Duc de Choiseul, the king's powerful minister of foreign affairs, saw Saint-Germain not as a marvel, but as a threat, a charlatan, a spy, a foreign agent of unknown allegiance. Choiseul was determined to unmask and destroy him. The minister's spies followed the Count's every move, reporting on his secret meetings, his alchemical experiments in his lavishly appointed apartments, and his quiet influence over the king. They found nothing. No paper trail, no family, no country of origin. He was a man without a ledger, a ghost in the meticulous archives of the French state. This lack of a past was more incriminating than any crime. Choiseul saw a vacuum of information and filled it with suspicion, whispering poison into the ears of other courtiers. The Count, for his part, seemed amused by the intrigue, moving through the gilded halls with an air of serene detachment, as if watching a play whose ending he already knew. The social duels were merciless. At opulent dinners, Choiseul's allies would try to trap the Count, questioning him on obscure points of history or geography, hoping to expose a flaw in his omniscience. They always failed. He would correct them gently, providing details so precise and vivid that it felt like a personal recollection. He spoke of conversations with Richard the Lionheart, of the chemical composition of the paints used by Leonardo, of the political strategy of Alexander the Great. Was it a brilliant, eidetic memory fueled by immense reading, or was it something else? The question hung in the air, thick and unnerving. What would you do if you met a person who claims he cannot die? Could you dismiss him as a madman, even as he performs the impossible before your very eyes? His immunity to their intellectual traps only fueled their hatred. If he could not be broken with words, other methods would have to be considered. The whispers turned from gossip to conspiracy. The first attempts on his life were subtle, in the classic Versailles style. a glass of wine that smelled faintly of almonds, a carriage whose axle was mysteriously filed down, a shadowy figure in a darkened corridor. Each time, Saint-Germain avoided the trap with an almost supernatural prescience. He would decline the drink with a polite smile, decide to walk instead of taking his carriage at the last moment, or take an unexpected turn just as an assassin's blade was drawn. He never accused anyone, never showed fear. He simply knew. This invulnerability drove his enemies into a cold fury. They were fighting not a man, but a phantom who anticipated their every move. To them, he was a disruption of the natural order, a walking anomaly that threatened the very foundations of their power, which was built on predictable lines of heritage, wealth, and influence. Saint-Germain had none of these, yet he held the king's ear. He had to be removed. Choiseul began a campaign of slander, spreading rumors that the Count was a Prussian spy, an agent of the Austrian Habsburgs, a Jacobite plotter seeking to restore the Stuarts to the English throne. He used the state apparatus to manufacture a case against him. The political climate was turning. France was on the brink of a disastrous war, the 7 Years' War, and paranoia was a currency more valuable than gold. The Count's foreign, accentless speech suddenly seemed suspicious. His mysterious wealth looked like enemy funding. His incredible knowledge was reframed as a spy's high-level intelligence. The pressure on the king to distance himself from this enigmatic figure grew daily. Louis XV, a man who valued his own comfort and stability above all else, began to waver. He enjoyed the Count's company, but he could not afford a political scandal that threatened his own minister. The game was reaching its climax. Choiseul orchestrated a public confrontation, accusing a man known to be associated with Saint-Germain of espionage. The trap was set not for the associate, but for the Count himself. The intention was to force him to defend his friend, thereby implicating himself and giving Choiseul the pretext for an arrest. The air in the palace was thick with tension. Everyone watched, waiting to see how the immortal man would escape this perfectly constructed political snare. Saint-Germain, however, did not play the game by their rules. He did not defend, he did not accuse, he did not flee. He simply vanished. One evening he was the center of Parisian society. The next morning his grand residence was empty, his servants were gone, and the Count of Saint-Germain had disappeared from France as completely as if he had never existed, leaving behind only a legend and a court full of baffled, terrified enemies. The Duc de Choiseul may have believed he had won, that he had driven the charlatan out of France, but he had misunderstood the nature of his adversary. Saint-Germain was not a courtier seeking position, he was a force of nature moving across the political landscape of Europe. His disappearance from Paris was not a retreat, but a repositioning. For while Choiseul celebrated his victory in the salons of Versailles, the king himself, Louis XV, was in a state of quiet panic. He had not just lost a fascinating companion, he had lost his most unique and potentially valuable asset. The looming war with England threatened to bankrupt France, and the king saw only one man with the unorthodox thinking and international connections to potentially avert it. Bypassing his own government, bypassing the triumphant Choiseul, Louis began to send out secret messages, searching for the man who had just been declared an enemy of the state. The king's secret communiques found their target in Holland. Saint-Germain reappeared in The Hague, the bustling center of European diplomacy and finance, not as a fugitive, but as a man on a mission. He shed his Parisian identity and adopted a new persona, that of a wealthy Belgian merchant, Monsieur de Surmont. He moved with the same confidence and limitless resources as before, taking up residence in a lavish estate and quickly integrating himself into the highest circles of power. His task, given to him directly by the French king in a secret cipher, was monumental: to negotiate a separate peace with England, effectively ending the 7 Years' War and saving France from ruin. It was a mission that placed him in direct opposition to the official French foreign policy, making him a traitor in the eyes of his own government. He was now the king's secret agent, playing a game so dangerous that a single misstep would mean not just prison, but execution. In the intricate dance of 18th century diplomacy, the Count was a master. He initiated back-channel talks with English diplomats using his immense personal charm and seemingly inexhaustible funds to open doors that were officially closed. He proposed a framework for peace that was both audacious and pragmatic, impressing the hardened English negotiators with his grasp of geopolitics and finance. He operated in a world of shadows, of late-night meetings in quiet country manners, of coded letters and trusted intermediaries. He was weaving a fragile web of peace while the official French ambassador in The Hague, the Comte d'Affry, a loyal subordinate of the Duc de Choiseul, was pursuing a policy of open hostility toward England. It was a collision course waiting to happen. The kings of Europe may have commanded armies, but Saint-Germain was waging a one-man war for peace, armed only with his intellect and his mystique. What would you do if you were asked to betray your country in order to save it? The inevitable explosion came when d'Affry, a traditional and unimaginative diplomat, got wind of these secret negotiations. He was outraged. An unknown upstart, a man chased out of Paris under a cloud of suspicion, was daring to interfere with the official business of the French crown. He saw it as a direct challenge to his authority and, by extension, to that of his patron, Choiseul. d'Affry sent a furious dispatch to Versailles, accusing Saint-Germain of treason and demanding his immediate arrest. The Duc de Choiseul seized the opportunity he had been waiting for. He presented d'Affry's letter to the king and the council, painting Saint-Germain as a rogue agent, a dangerous freelancer who was undermining the nation's war effort. This time, the king could not protect him. Faced with the unified opposition of his own government, Louis XV was forced to disavow his secret agent. The order was signed: arrest the man known as the Count of Saint-Germain. A Europe-wide manhunt began. Choiseul's agents were dispatched with warrants and descriptions, a network of spies closing in on The Hague. But Saint-Germain was always one step ahead. He received a timely warning, likely from his own network of contacts that reached into the highest levels of every government. As French and Dutch agents closed in on his estate, they found it empty. He had vanished again, taking with him his secrets and his mission. The chase was on. He fled from Holland into England, the very country with which he had been trying to make peace. It was a bold, almost insane move. He sought refuge in the lion's den, counting on the fact that his English contacts would offer him protection, at least temporarily. He arrived in London and immediately made himself known, not hiding, but rather seeking out the very ministers with whom he had been negotiating. It was a high-stakes gamble on their honor and their self-interest. His gamble paid off, but only for a short time. The English government was intrigued by him, but also deeply suspicious. They were not about to harbor a man publicly declared a traitor by the French king. While they granted him a brief period of asylum, the diplomatic pressure from France was immense. Choiseul was relentless, demanding his extradition. The Count became a prisoner in a gilded cage, unable to leave England, watched by both English and French spies. His grand plan for peace had collapsed, and he was now a man without a country, hunted by the government he had tried to serve. His enemies had finally cornered him. Or so they thought. One foggy London evening, as agents watched his residence from the rain-slicked street, the Count of Saint-Germain walked out his front door, stepped into a waiting carriage, and disappeared into the night. By the time the alarm was raised, he was gone. He had slipped through the net once more, leaving a trail of baffled intelligence agencies and a furious Duc de Choiseul. His escape from London was a masterpiece of evasion. He left no trail, no clues. For months, he was a ghost. Choiseul's spies scoured the continent, from Lisbon to Vienna, turning up nothing but rumors and dead ends. Some said he had taken refuge in a German principality, others that he had gone to Turkey. The truth was far more audacious. The Count had not sought a quiet refuge. He had gone to the one place in Europe where the political landscape was so volatile, so pregnant with change, that a man of his talents could not just hide, but could shape the future of an empire. He had traveled east to the frozen, glittering and brutal capital of the Russian Empire, St. Petersburg. The shadow of his influence, having darkened the doors of Versailles and Whitehall, now fell upon the cold banks of the Neva River, a place where a weak and unstable Tsar was about to be swept away by a tidal wave of conspiracy. He arrived in Russia under yet another name, that of General Saltykov, a title and identity that seemed to have been conjured from thin air, but was accepted without question. The court of Tsar Peter III was a chaotic mess of German influence and Russian resentment, a powder keg waiting for a spark. The Tsar was a deeply unpopular pro-Prussian ruler who alienated the powerful imperial guard and his own intelligent and ambitious wife, a German princess named Sophie, who had taken the name Catherine. Saint-Germain, with his perfect command of German and Russian, his military bearing, and his uncanny ability to navigate treacherous political waters, moved quietly into the circles of the disaffected military elite. Specifically, he cultivated a close relationship with the Orlov brothers, Grigory and Alexei, who were not only leaders within the Guard but also the passionate champions, and in Grigory's case, the lover of the ambitious Catherine. The conspiracy to overthrow Peter III and place Catherine on the throne was already in motion, but it was a desperate, high-risk affair. The plotters had passion and military muscle, but they lacked coordination and, crucially, money. Bribing soldiers, securing transportation, and ensuring loyalty required vast sums of cash, which the conspirators did not have. It is at this precise historical juncture that the figure of Saint-Germain becomes both central and deeply mysterious. According to the memoirs of several participants in the coup, on the decisive nights leading up to the overthrow in June of 1762, a mysterious foreign general was with the Orlov brothers in the barracks of the Preobrazhensky and Izmailovsky guards. This stranger, who spoke Russian fluently, was seen distributing fistfuls of gold coins to the soldiers, his quiet charisma and open purse turning hesitant guardsmen into fervent supporters of Catherine's cause. Power is not taken, it is seized in the dead of night while the old world sleeps. On the night of the coup, this man was in the heart of the action. Eyewitness accounts place him riding alongside the Orlovs as they led the Guards regiments on their night march to the Winter Palace. He was the calm center of the storm, a strategic mind guiding the raw force of the mutiny. Was he the secret financier of the revolution? Or was he its chief strategist, the unseen hand guiding the Orlovs and shaping the events that would make Catherine the Great the Empress of all the Russias? The historical record is tantalizingly silent on the details, but the circumstantial evidence is powerful. The coup was executed with a speed and precision that stunned all of Europe. Peter III was arrested and forced to abdicate without a single shot being fired in the capital. Catherine was proclaimed Empress, and a new era in Russian history began. And then, just as he had in Paris and London, Saint-Germain vanished. Immediately after Catherine's triumphant accession to the throne, the mysterious General Saltykov was gone. He asked for no reward, no position at the new court, no acknowledgement of his role. He simply disappeared from Russia, leaving behind a new, powerful empress on the throne and a swirling legend among the guardsmen of the man in white who had appeared from nowhere to decide the fate of their empire. For Catherine and the Orlovs, his disappearance was a blessing. It erased a potential witness and a foreign creditor who knew too much about the bloody origins of their reign. For history, it created another layer to the enigma. He had toppled a king in France through influence and intrigue, and now he had seemingly installed an empress in Russia through conspiracy and gold. He was not just a player in the game of nations, he was changing the board itself. Having orchestrated a change of power in the cold north, the Count next surfaced in a city of sun and shadows, a labyrinth of canals and secrets, the Republic of Venice. He arrived under the name Marquis de Bellamy, his persona once again shifting to suit his environment. In the decadent carnival atmosphere of 18th century Venice, he presented himself not as a political operator, but as a master of the esoteric arts, an alchemist of legendary skill. This new identity, however, would bring him face to face with two of the most formidable forces in Italy, the greatest adventurer of the age, Giacomo Casanova, and the spies of the Holy Inquisition. Venice, a city of masks, was the perfect stage for a duel between two masters of illusion, a confrontation that would be recorded for posterity in Casanova's own famous memoirs. The city was a beautiful woman with a poisoned dagger hidden in her skirts. She offered pleasure but demanded vigilance. Their meeting was inevitable. Casanova, the libertine, gambler, and self-proclaimed magician, was the reigning celebrity of the Venetian demimonde. He heard whispers of a new rival, a mysterious foreigner whose claims and abilities seemed to far surpass his own. Intrigued and professionally jealous, Casanova arranged a meeting. The encounter, as he later described it, was not a friendly chat, but a tense psychological duel. Saint-Germain received him with perfect courtesy, but also with an air of unnerving authority. Casanova, who prided himself on his ability to read and manipulate people, found himself completely disarmed. He tried to probe the Count to find a crack in his facade, but was met with a serene and omniscient calm. Saint-Germain spoke of chemistry not as an art, but as a perfect science he had mastered, claiming he could make gold and grow pearls. He spoke of his medicinal elixirs, casually mentioning that the one he took himself simply kept him in perfect health perpetually at the age of 45. Casanova left the meeting deeply unsettled. He, the master charlatan, felt he had met his master. In his memoirs, he writes of Saint-Germain with a unique mixture of awe, suspicion, and genuine fear. He could not decide if the man was the world's most accomplished trickster or something else entirely, something beyond his comprehension. This extraordinary man, Casanova wrote, would say in an easy, assured manner that he was 300 years old, that he possessed a universal medicine, that he had a command over nature. While Casanova was grappling with the psychological enigma of the Count, others were taking a more direct interest. Saint-Germain's public demonstrations of alchemy and his private gatherings with Venetian nobles interested in Hermetic philosophy attracted the unwanted attention of the one power in Venice more feared than the Council of Ten, the Inquisition. The Church saw his claims not as parlor tricks but as heresy. The spies of the Holy Office were everywhere in Venice, their network of informants legendary. They began to monitor the Marquis de Bellamy, reporting on his visitors, his experiments, and his unsettling speeches on the nature of matter and time. Surveillance tightened around him. His every move was watched. He would find himself followed through the narrow, twisting alleyways, his gondola shadowed by another on the dark canals. The threat was no longer political intrigue or a rival's envy. It was the cold, unyielding fanaticism of the Church. The Inquisition did not issue warnings, it acted. An arrest meant torture, a secret trial, and a quiet execution in the Doge's dungeons. Saint-Germain, with his usual preternatural awareness, sensed the net closing. He knew he had to flee Venice before the Inquisitor's hands fell upon his shoulder. His escape from the Republic was as dramatic and flawless as all his other departures. He was scheduled to attend a grand banquet hosted by one of his Venetian patrons. The spies of the Inquisition planned to arrest him there, away from his home, where he would be unable to destroy any evidence. They surrounded the palazzo, watching every entrance. But the Count never arrived. He had sent his regrets at the last moment, citing a sudden illness. While the Inquisitors waited impatiently at the party, Saint-Germain was already on a boat, sailing out of the Venetian lagoon under the cover of darkness. He had slipped through their fingers, leaving them with an empty residence and the furious embarrassment of having been outwitted. He left Casanova with a memory that would haunt him for the rest of his life, and the Inquisition with a file on a heretic who could not be caught. It is a moment of choice for any storyteller, for any investigator of this life. Faced with the inexplicable, would you rather keep the secret of a brilliant spy or that of a man who commands the laws of nature? Is it more dangerous to know the secrets of men or the secrets of God? Write your verdict in the comments. SPY or SOR, CERER. After the heat of Venetian intrigue, the Count sought a cooler, more contemplative environment. He travelled north into the fragmented but intellectually vibrant world of the German principalities. Here, he found not just a temporary refuge, but a powerful and devoted patron, Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel, a ruler deeply fascinated by mysticism, alchemy, and the burgeoning world of secret societies. In the prince's castle in Schleswig, Saint-Germain found a sanctuary and a laboratory. For several years, he lived as the prince's closest friend and advisor, a period that marks his deepest and most documented immersion into the clandestine world of Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati. He was no longer a political operative or a society marvel. He was now playing the role of the great adept, the master of ancient wisdom. Together, Saint-Germain and Prince Charles embarked on a series of ambitious projects. They established a laboratory dedicated to the creation of dyes, the treating of fabrics, and most secretly, the great work of alchemy, the transmutation of metals and the search for the philosopher's stone. For the prince, it was a passionate hobby. For Saint-Germain, the purpose was, as always, opaque. Was he genuinely seeking the secrets of creation, or was he using the prince's resources for some other, hidden agenda? He became an immensely influential figure in the esoteric underground of Europe. His reputation preceded him. He was welcomed into Masonic lodges, where he was said to have achieved the highest degrees of initiation in a remarkably short time. He spoke to his fellow Masons not as a student, but as one who was merely reminding them of truths they had forgotten. He hinted at a primordial tradition, an ancient wisdom of which all their rituals were but a pale shadow. This assent, however, was not without conflict. The world of 18th century secret societies was a battlefield of competing rites, ideologies, and ambitions. Men like Cagliostro and Martinez de Pasquale were also building their own esoteric empires, and Saint-Germain's sudden prominence was seen as a threat. Within the lodges, a silent war for influence was waged, intrigues were woven, rival masters slandered each other, and factions plotted to gain control over the minds and fortunes of the European elite. Was their goal the enlightenment of humanity, as they publicly claimed? Or was it a more terrestrial ambition to create a network of influence that could steer the course of nations? Secret societies promised to reveal the truth, but more often they just create a more elegant prison for the mind. Saint-Germain was at the very epicenter of this clandestine struggle, a grandmaster in a game played with symbols and oaths instead of armies and cannons. His teachings during this period were a strange mix of practical science and sublime mysticism. He would lecture the prince on advanced chemistry one day and on the angelic hierarchies the next. He claimed to be a Rosicrucian, an heir to the legendary Christian Rosenkreuz, and hinted that he was an emissary from a hidden order of masters who guided the destiny of the world. To his followers, he was a true illuminated one. To his rivals, he was the most dangerous and seductive fraud in Europe. He managed to create a powerful network of followers throughout Germany and Austria, men in high positions who were captivated by his charisma and his promise of hidden knowledge. Yet he never seemed to use this network for personal gain or for any discernible political goal. He built a machine of influence and then seemed content to simply let it exist, a silent testament to his power. Despite his secure position with the Prince of Hesse-Kassel, the Count remained a wanderer. The final years of his officially recorded life were spent in relative quiet, conducting experiments and advising his princely friend. According to the church records of Eckernford, a man identified as the Count of Saint-Germain died on February 27, 1784. He was buried, and Prince Charles mourned the loss of his great teacher. For any normal man, this would be the end of the story. But for Saint-Germain, death was merely another disappearance, a convenient fiction to close one chapter of his story. His enemies in France may have rejoiced, but those who knew him better felt a chill. They did not believe it. They knew he was not the kind of man to simply die of old age in a provincial German town, and they were right. The death of 1784 was a strategic retreat, not an end. As Germany mourned a great philosopher, shadows were gathering once more over France. The kingdom of Louis XVI, grandson of the Count's old acquaintance, was stumbling towards a precipice of bankruptcy and revolution. And from the shadows, a familiar figure emerged. Dozens of credible witnesses, aristocrats and courtiers who had known him intimately decades earlier, swore they saw the Count of Saint-Germain in Paris in the years leading up to the French Revolution. He looked exactly the same, not a day older than he had in the 1740s. A ghost had returned to walk the streets of Paris, a city on the verge of tearing itself apart, and he brought with him a final, desperate warning. The most detailed and chilling account of these posthumous appearances comes from the memoirs of Madame d'Ademar, a lady-in-waiting to Queen Marie Antoinette and a long-time friend of the Count. She claimed that Saint-Germain appeared to her secretly on several occasions, his face etched with a gravity she had never seen before. He was no longer the witty, detached courtier. He was a prophet of doom. He spoke of a gigantic conspiracy that would drown France in blood. He predicted the fall of the Bastille, the rise of a republic, the execution of the king and queen, and the terror that would follow. He begged Madame d'Ademar to arrange a secret meeting with the queen, insisting that he alone knew a way to avert the coming catastrophe. He was a man trying to whisper reason to a hurricane. According to the legend, a secret meeting with Marie Antoinette did take place. In the dimly lit chambers of Versailles, the immortal man allegedly faced the doomed queen. He implored her to persuade the king to flee, to make reforms, to break the power of the factions that were steering the kingdom toward annihilation. He spoke with the authority of one who had seen revolutions before, who understood the mechanics of history. The queen, trapped in the rigid etiquette and political blindness of her court, was said to have been terrified but ultimately paralyzed. She could not convince her husband, a man incapable of decisive action, to heed the warnings of a ghost. The die was cast. Saint-Germain's final desperate attempt to save the French monarchy had failed. During the bloody years of the Revolution, the sightings continued. He was reportedly seen in the crowds watching the storming of the Bastille, a silent, sorrowful observer. He was glimpsed in the galleries of the Jacobin Club, listening to the fiery speeches of Robespierre. He was even said to have been present at the execution of Marie Antoinette, a shadowy figure at the edge of the Place de la Révolution, his face impassive as the guillotine fell. Was he a tragic prophet, witnessing the fulfillment of a future he had tried to prevent? Or was he something more sinister, a shadowy puppet master who had helped set the revolutionary machine in motion and was now watching it run its course? His figure flits through the chaos and terror of revolutionary Paris, a question mark written in blood against the pages of history. He had played with kings, and now he was watching the fall of the very concept of kingship. His physical presence, whether real or imagined, faded with the end of the terror. The historical man, the ghost of the revolution, finally seemed to recede from the world of men. But his work was not done. The death of Saint-Germain in 1784 was the beginning of his true life, a life in legend. The 18th century adventurer was about to be reborn as a god for the modern age. The seeds of this transformation were planted in the esoteric societies he had nurtured, but they would come to full, spectacular bloom in the hands of another Russian, a formidable and controversial mystic named Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. In the late 19th century, she would take the ghost of an aristocrat and turn him into an immortal being who guided the spiritual evolution of all humanity. The stage for this apotheosis was the Theosophical Society, founded by Madame Blavatsky in New York City in 1875. This new spiritual movement was a potent synthesis of Eastern mysticism, Western occultism, and modern science, and it captivated a world hungry for meaning in an age of industrialization and declining religious faith. At the heart of Blavatsky's cosmology was the concept of the Masters of Wisdom, a secret brotherhood of enlightened, immortal beings who lived in hidden locations like Tibet and who were responsible for overseeing the spiritual progress of the human race. And among the greatest and most powerful of these masters, Blavatsky declared, was the Count of Saint-Germain. He had not died, he had simply ascended and continued his work from a higher plane of existence. A man can die, but an idea, once planted in the minds of millions, is truly immortal. Blavatsky's declaration was an information explosion. The historical count, with his documented appearances and political intrigues, was subsumed by the mythic master. He became a cult figure. Theosophical lodges around the world, from London to Chennai, studied his supposed teachings. Books began to appear allegedly channeled or psychically dictated by Saint-Germain himself from the spirit world. These texts offered spiritual guidance, cosmic revelations, and prophecies for the future. The image of the Count was transformed from a witty 18th century alchemist into a divine, all-knowing guru, a figure of worship. Thousands and eventually millions of followers came to believe not just in his historical existence, but in his continuing active presence in the world. He was no longer a mystery to be solved, but a savior to be followed. This rapid growth of the Saint-Germain myth was not a peaceful process. It generated intense conflicts and schisms. As the Theosophical Society grew, different factions claimed to have a more direct or authentic connection to the master. Spiritualists, channelers, and occult leaders vied for the title of his chosen messenger on earth. A fierce ideological battle began over his legacy. Was he the champion of a specific political agenda? Did he favor one nation over another? His name was invoked to justify everything from vegetarianism and pacifism to radical political ideologies. The legend had broken free from any historical anchor and was now a powerful, independent entity, a viral idea that mutated and adapted as it spread through the consciousness of the modern world. This process created a permanent split in his identity. For historians, he remains a fascinating but ultimately human enigma of the 18th century. A brilliant adventurer, perhaps a spy, certainly a gifted chemist and linguist. For millions of believers in esoteric traditions, he is Saint-Germain, the ascended master, an immortal being of light, the lord of the seventh ray, the hierarch of the Aquarian age. This latter version, the myth, has proven to be far more durable and influential than the man. It speaks to a profound human yearning for wisdom, for guidance, and for the promise that death is not the end. The question of who the Count was became less important than what he is believed to be. And faced with these two versions, the historical person and the immortal idea, which do you believe holds more power over the course of human events? A documented fact or a beautiful legend? Tell us what you think in the comments below. The myth of Saint-Germain as an ascended master, a spiritual guide for humanity, proved to be incredibly adaptable. While it flourished in the esoteric salons of Europe, it found uniquely fertile ground in the New World, specifically in the national mythology of the United States of America. A powerful and persistent legend emerged that connected the Count directly to the founding of the nation. Although there is not a single verifiable historical document placing him on the American continent, the story of his secret role in the American Revolution became a cornerstone of many esoteric traditions. The legend casts him not merely as a sympathizer, but as a direct, physical catalyst for the nation's birth. Every nation needs its ghost, a silent witness to its birth who blesses its destiny. The narrative unfolds like a political thriller. The setting is Philadelphia in the summer of 1776. The delegates of the Second Continental Congress are gathered in the Pennsylvania State House. The mood is grim. They are debating the radical motion for independence from Great Britain, a document we now know as the Declaration of Independence. But many delegates are wavering. The risk is immense. To sign the document would be an act of high treason, punishable by hanging. The British Army is the most powerful in the world. The fledgling colonies are divided and poorly equipped. Fear and doubt hang heavy in the hot, humid air. The revolution is on the verge of collapse before it has even begun. The debate stalls. Failure seems imminent. At this dramatic, pivotal moment, the legend insists a stranger appeared. The doors to the hall were locked and guarded, yet he was suddenly there, standing among the delegates. No one knew who he was or how he had entered. He was described as a tall, imposing figure, his face radiating intelligence and command. He began to speak. His voice, filled with passion and power, electrified the room. He spoke of the great destiny of the new nation, of the birth of a new era of freedom for all mankind. He rebuked their fears, calling them to rise to the challenge of history. "God has given America to be free," he thundered. "Sign that parchment." Sign that parchment. He painted a vision of a great republic that would be a beacon of hope for the world. His fiery oratory swept away all doubt, all hesitation. Inspired by the mysterious stranger's words, a wave of courage and determination swept through the hall. The delegates rushed forward, seizing the quill to sign their names to the declaration. When they turned to thank the man who had galvanized them, he was gone. He had vanished from the locked room as mysteriously as he had appeared. The mysterious professor, as he came to be known in the legend, was never seen again. This story, though lacking any basis in the official records of the Continental Congress, has been told and retold for over a century. In American esoteric circles, there is no doubt as to the stranger's identity. It was the Count of Saint-Germain carrying out his mission as a spiritual guide, ensuring the birth of a nation he believed was crucial to the future evolution of humanity. This myth serves a powerful purpose. It infuses the pragmatic political act of the nation's founding with a sense of divine providence and mystical significance. It suggests that the United States of America was not just a political experiment, but a spiritual one, blessed and guided by a hidden master. The legend extends to other founding symbols. Some esoteric traditions claim that Saint-Germain was the true designer of the Great Seal of the United States, with its occult symbols of the pyramid and the all-seeing eye. Others say he advised George Washington on military strategy and was the true author behind the works of Shakespeare, a claim that neatly connects him to the foundations of English language culture. The historical man had become a Zelig-like figure, a phantom present at every key moment of Western history, a secret father to its greatest achievements. He was no longer just an immortal man, he was the immortal spirit of progress itself. This Americanization of the Saint-Germain myth demonstrated its incredible versatility. He could be a European courtier, a Russian conspirator, and an American revolutionary all at once. The legend became a mirror reflecting the aspirations and self-image of the culture that adopted it. But as the story moved into the turbulent 20th century, the mirror began to reflect darker, more dangerous images. The myth, which had inspired a noble revolution, would soon be co-opted by mass movements and sinister ideologies. From the sun-drenched hills of California to the dark, torch-lit halls of Nazi Germany, the phantom of the Count was about to embark on his most disturbing journey yet, showing that the same legend can be used to promise salvation or to justify damnation. A legend is a mirror. It does not have its own face, but reflects the one who looks into it, be it a saint or a monster. In the 1930s, against the backdrop of the Great Depression, a new American prophet emerged who would bring the cult of Saint-Germain to an unprecedented scale. Guy Ballard, a former mining engineer, claimed that while hiking on Mount Shasta in California, he was visited by none other than the ascended Master Saint-Germain. According to Ballard, the Count took him on a series of fantastic journeys, revealing cosmic secrets and dictating a new spiritual teaching for America. Ballard and his wife Edna founded the I Am activity, a movement based entirely on the communications they claimed to receive from Saint-Germain. The Count was presented as a divine being who had chosen America for a special destiny and had appointed the Ballards as his sole accredited messengers. The I Am movement was a phenomenon. It swept across a nation desperate for hope and certainty. The Ballards held massive gatherings in auditoriums filled with thousands of cheering followers, all dressed in patriotic colors. Their message was a powerful mix of New Age spirituality, positive thinking, and fervent American nationalism. Saint-Germain, they taught, was the true guiding spirit of the United States of America, and by following his decrees, as relayed by the Ballards, adherents could achieve health, wealth, and personal salvation. The movement grew with explosive speed, attracting an estimated 1 million followers and accumulating vast sums of money through donations and the sale of books, charts, and charged objects. It was a theatrical, colorful, and wildly successful enterprise, turning the esoteric European Count into an American spiritual superstar. But this success attracted the attention of the federal government, which saw not a new religion, but a massive mail fraud scheme. The Ballards were eventually indicted, and the movement, though it survived, was forever tainted by scandal. While Saint-Germain was being hailed as a patriotic American deity in California, his name was being whispered in far more sinister circles across the Atlantic. In Germany, the burgeoning Nazi movement and its occult precursors, like the Thule Society, were deeply interested in esoteric legends and figures who could be used to support their ideology of Aryan supremacy. Heinrich Himmler's SS, in particular, was tasked with researching arcane and occult lore to find historical justification for Nazi beliefs. The figure of Saint-Germain, the man of mysterious origin, immense knowledge, and possible immortality, was a person of great interest. They saw in him not a universal spiritual master, but a potential example of a superior, perhaps Aryan, being who had operated behind the scenes of history. The Nazis were obsessed with the idea of secret masters and hidden wisdom. They sought a mystical validation for their political project. In Saint-Germain, some occultists within the Third Reich saw a model of the Übermensch, Nietzsche's Superman, a being who transcended conventional morality and history. They were fascinated by his connection to secret societies, which they believed held the keys to worldly power. The legend was twisted and reinterpreted to fit their dark worldview. His alchemy was seen as a mastery over material reality, his longevity a sign of racial purity. The same myth that was being used in America to preach love and light was being studied in Germany as a potential blueprint for a master race. The contrast could not be more stark. It was the ultimate demonstration of the legend's dangerous neutrality, its capacity to be a vessel for any ideology, no matter how contradictory. The story of the Count in the 20th century is a cautionary tale about the power of myth. It shows how a single, compelling narrative can be used to create mass hysteria, to build financial empires, and to provide a mystical gloss for totalitarian horror. From the theatrical madness of the I Am cult, with its pageants and decrees from the ascended masters, to the grim, methodical research of Nazi occultists seeking the secrets of power, the phantom of Saint-Germain haunted the century. He was a ghost in the machine of modern mass movements. The man who had once played with kings at Versailles was now a tool used to manipulate millions. The historical figure was long gone, but his legend had become a battlefield where the dreams and nightmares of the modern world clashed. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the old mediums of myth, secret societies, channeled books, grand auditoriums, were replaced by a new, instantaneous global network. The internet became the new home for ghosts, and the Count of Saint-Germain, ever adaptable, logged on. His legend did not die, it went digital. In the vast, unregulated ecosystem of the web, he experienced another explosive rebirth, mutating into forms his 18th century self could never have imagined. The hunt for the historical Saint-Germain was over. His myth had won a final, decisive victory, achieving a new kind of immortality in the ones and zeros of the information age. He was no longer just a legend, he had become a meme, a data point in the global consciousness, an eternal return in the endless scroll. Today, the Count is everywhere and nowhere. He is a central figure in sprawling conspiracy theories that connect him to everything from the Knights Templar to modern-day secret governments. He appears as a charismatic, immortal anti-hero in video games, a wise mentor in fantasy novels, and a powerful vampire in television series. Online communities and social media groups are dedicated to his teachings, channeling his wisdom for a new generation of spiritual seekers. His image, once confined to dusty portraits, is now endlessly replicated, photoshopped, and shared. He can be a financial guru offering secrets to wealth, an alien starseed who came to Earth to help humanity, or a time traveler caught in a historical photograph. The digital space has shattered his identity into 1,000 glittering fragments, each one reflecting a different facet of our contemporary hopes and fears. This digital apotheosis represents the final stage of his evolution. He has transcended history, becoming a pure symbol. The question of whether he was real is now irrelevant. He is real in the way that all powerful myths are real. He exists as a living story in our collective imagination. He is the ultimate blank slate onto which we project our deepest desires for knowledge, for power, for eternal life. He is the perpetual outsider who masters every system, the man with no past who controls the future, the individual who stands against the crushing force of time and wins. He is the embodiment of human potential, freed from the constraints of mortality and origin. His true immortality lies not in a physical body that does not age, but in a story that never gets old, a story that we will continue to tell ourselves as long as we dream of being more than what we are. The journey is complete. From the treacherous court of Louis XV to the endless corridors of the internet, the Count of Saint-Germain has been a constant presence, a shadow flitting at the edge of our history. He has been a courtier, a spy, a revolutionary, a prophet, a god, a cult leader, and now a digital ghost. Each era has recreated him in its own image, has used him for its own purposes. He has outlived all his enemies, all his friends, all the kings and queens he once advised. He has achieved the one thing all alchemists truly sought, not the transformation of lead into gold, but the transformation of a mortal life into an eternal legend. His story is a testament to the fact that the most powerful force in human history is not an army or an empire, but a compelling narrative. The ghost of the Count will haunt us forever because he is a part of us. Count Saint-Germain left behind an unsolvable mystery. Was he a brilliant charlatan who masterfully duped all of Europe with his intellect and charm, or was he a true phenomenon whose nature lies beyond our current understanding of reality? Write your answer in the comments, because in this story, the final word has not yet been written.